Hello and welcome to Property TV. This is Property Matters and I'm Stephen Galpin. We're going to be making a series of 2 programmes about buying in France. With me today is Joanna Leggett, who is co-founder of Leggett Immobilier, and she has contributed many times to our question time programming, which I think you've enjoyed in the past.
Great fun, thank you.
So welcome to you. Thank you, I suppose I should say thank you in the first instance for all the knowledge you've imparted over the last couple of years on that programme. But Joanna, what I want to do today is try and encapsulate the journey of buying a property in France. So if I may, we'll start off in this particular programme by looking at what you, as perhaps one of the leading agents in France, can do for me when I want to buy property and how that process works on the way through. And then in programme 2, we'll be looking at where and what to expect in France when we've finally made our choice. Okay?
Okay, yeah, no problem.
So let me ask you first of all, Joanna, where do most of your clients come from? Is it from adverts in the Sunday Times or is it from exhibitions or...?
Well, realistically, clients come from everywhere, but 90%, I would say now, of all property searches start online. Particularly when you don't live in the country, you can't drive around and have a look around or pop into an estate agent's office as we were used to doing in the past. And I think worldwide, 80% of all property searches start online. So whether you're looking at a portal or our own website, or you're directed from a news article to a website, etc., most of it will start, as we say, one click away. So okay. you look on a website. Best place to start, because you can do that in the quietness of your own home. You can do as much research as you can from your own laptop or your computer at home, which is very important if you are moving to another country. You can watch seminars and programs like this, obviously from home, so that you've got a really good research background before you actually even go out to France to visit a property. And research is very important, although I would say doing a recce trip and actually going out and seeing if you like the area is also very important. I mean, for us as a company, we are all round. We advertise in lots of French magazines in France and in the UK, because we find a lot of British buyers actually already live in France and they're just moving from one area to another. They might find that the south has been too hot and they want to move further north, or situations have changed and they need to be closer to the UK, so they may move up to northern France or western France. And if you're in the UK, again, you can research all the portals and all the websites and put together a really good shortlist of properties that you want to see before you come over. What
about the property exhibitions that I see advertised here?
The property exhibitions are great. Unfortunately this year we haven't had many, but hopefully next year they'll be coming back in. The great thing about exhibitions is that you can go along to all the seminars, which will talk to you about tax, they'll talk to you about inheritance laws, they'll talk to you about different areas of France, and you'll have lots of different companies there that have got a world of knowledge, and it's a great point to start. I mean, all of the stands, including ourselves, are there to help. We're not there to sell you anything, we're just there to talk to you about different areas, climates, getting children into school, what work opportunities there are, healthcare, etc. And so I would say that an exhibition is a really good starting point, because you'll have everybody in one place, and you can have a really good chat, you can watch the seminars, you can talk to other clients on the stand, and generally speaking on our stand we try to take agents from all different areas so that they can talk about their individual region. And also we tend to take the British agents who work with us who've actually done the move, so they can talk to the clients from their own experience, what the pitfalls were, what they found that was good, what was bad, etc. So you can get a real life experience by going to a property exhibition.
Well, I can remember years and years ago I used to work in Spain, and I used to hear the guys and girls talk, and they always used to say, actually it's like having another member of the family when you're trying to help somebody move to a different country. You know, it's where do I get a stamp, where do I tax my car, where do I?
It totally is, and it's such a different world being an estate agent in another country to being an estate agent in the UK. If you're selling property to Brits in the UK, obviously they know the area, they tend to know the schools, they tend to know exactly which road they want to buy in, or which area they want, whether that's for a school catchment area. When you're buying abroad, it's a lifestyle choice. So it's a totally different market as such. And so for an estate agent in France, it's a complete hold-handing service because hand-holding, should I say, because you know, they don't know the area.
Well, not anymore, not at the moment anyway.
Maybe elbow bashing. But they have to, you know, they don't know the language. That's probably the biggest barrier, whether you're going to Spain, Italy or France. But with France, particularly if you're buying in rural areas, nobody will speak English. Whereas in Spain, you'll get a lot of areas where they all speak English and can be quite helpful. So the role of an agent is very, very different to what it would be in the UK. And you do have to give a lot of advice and you do have to give a lot of experience. So you become sort of a tourist guide because you want to show the area and show what's available in the area. I've taken families to the local school so they can see the school. I've taken them to meet the mayor so they can meet the mayor and the local community. I've taken them to local events so they can see what's going on. Now that obviously wouldn't happen in the UK. If you were buying a house in the UK, you'd view the house, make your offer and the estate agent would take you through. So it's a very different type of service that's offered by agents in foreign countries as such.
Okay, so I've attended your exhibition. I'm thinking, yep, this is the place I want to go. How would I set about deciding what area? We'll talk about the specific areas in programme 2, but how would you suggest I start to limit the numbers?
I would suggest what we tend to do, if you're at an exhibition, we will talk to you about the areas at the exhibition. You can watch seminars on different areas of France, etc. Some that I presented myself are available online that you can watch regarding the different areas. I would suggest that a recce trip is essential because I wouldn't buy in an area that you don't know. You know, if you've never been there, you haven't holidayed there. A lot of our buyers have holidayed in the areas that they want to buy in, and that's why they're buying in those areas. But if you don't know the area, a recce trip is really important. But what we would do, we would take a criteria. So what is it you're looking for in your new life? Do you need to be near to the UK? Are you looking for weather? Are you looking for hot weather? Are you looking for mild weather? Do you need lots of land? Have you got a big family? Have you got a small budget but you need lots of land? So we take a really, really good criteria list, put that together. From that list, we'd be able to tell which are the best areas for that particular individual or family, because you say you've got 150,000 euros and you need a 5-bedroom house with thousands of acres of land or whatever, you're not going to get that in the south of France. You know, 180 is probably the minimum for a 3-bedroom village house, whereas 150 in the Creuse or the Limousin areas, which is the centre of France, you would have a lovely big farmhouse with lots of land. So I think budget is one of the main criteria, and also the weather and how close proximity, or how you need to, if you need to get back to the UK, whether that's grandchildren or you want to commute or one of the partners wants to commute, then again transport links are quite important for getting back as well.
All right, so first thing then is decide that's something you want to do. Second thing is have a look at your specific requirements, and along with that, look at the budget that you've actually got to spend. Exactly.
And then what we can do with that, so once we have a criteria, we have a sales support team at our head office, and what they will do then is they will put you in touch with, we'll decide together, like, what's the right area for you? These are the areas that we think. So there may be 3 areas that fit the criteria and you're not sure of those areas. Then it will come down to the type of house you actually like, because in France, because it's huge, you know, it's the biggest country in Western Europe, the areas change quite dramatically, so the architecture can be totally different. So then it's down to your style of property. So what our sales support team would do would be to send your criteria out to all of the agents that we have working with us in those areas. They would then put together some property links to our website, send them back to sales support, and then sales support would send them out to you as the client. So then what you can do is look at all these links, think, I like that one, no, that's absolutely awful, I don't want that one. And then we'd start to form a short list of properties that you actually like the look of, and that gives us an idea of what you like and what you don't like. Then when you're ready to actually travel and come out and have a look, our sales support team would put together an itinerary for you, because we know how far apart the properties are. They could be an hour apart,
sure.
they could be 15 minutes apart. So we'd put together an itinerary and plan that with yourselves. We'd always suggest that you have days off in between, because A, you might like a property and want to go back, or you might really love a property but don't know the area, so you might want to spend some time looking at it in that particular area. But that would be the initial start, is getting together the appointments.
So initially, what would be a recommended number of properties to look at? I mean, again, I just go back to my days years and years ago in Spain. I used to see people locked up by reps looking at a multitude of properties without a breath in between.
Totally.
And of course, they all merge into one at the end.
Was that fireplace in that house, or was it in that house? You know, was that a beam? Did that have beams? That's exactly what happens. I would suggest, depending on the size of the property, I mean, if you were looking at a chateau, then one a day. Don't spend any more. You know, going to 2 chateaux in a day is just going to be too much. I would always say take a camera with you, because then you can make your own notes on the property details that you're given. You can take some photographs of the things you like about that property, so that when you go back and you're having your glass of wine in the evening with your cheese and your baguette, you can then go through those photographs, look at the property details, and again start making your shortlist when you get home. I would suggest probably 3 properties a day, at the max 4. I wouldn't try to fit in any more than that, because as you say, they will all merge into one.
And how long would your recce trip be for? Would you say 3 or 4 days?
Yeah, you can do it in 3 or 4 days. If you can do a week, it depends on the areas. If you've sort of narrowed down your area and it's one small town or a couple of towns that are close by, yeah, 3 or 4 days is fine. But if you're going, say, from the Charente to the Dordogne, you could be looking at a 2-hour drive, you know, or possibly more. So you have to. It depends on how far apart the properties are, which we can advise you on. You know, and then you might want to do a day in the Charente, a day in the Dordogne, but bear in mind you've got the travelling distances.
Yes, I mean, surrounding areas are just as important in some ways as the property itself, aren't they?
Of course, and with France being so big, you know, you can be 20 minutes from the next village. You could be 10, 15 minutes from the nearest shopping centre or you know, shops or supermarket. So it's very, very important that you leave enough time. Don't pack in loads of properties. You leave enough time to explore those areas.
Okay. All right, Joanna, what we're going to do, we're going to go to a commercial break now. In part 2, we'll look at what happens when we set foot in France.
Great, thank you.
Join us after the break. Hello and welcome back to part 2 of Property Matters, our French special. Join me is Joanna Leggett and I'm Stephen Galpin. So, Joanna, I've listened to what you've had to say in the first half of the programme. We're all excited. We're off to look at some properties in France. So I jump on the Eurostar. I arrive in France. What happens next? Do you meet me?
Well, we would obviously meet you, but the most important thing I think would be A, where you're going to be staying. So we can help you with that with chambre d'hôtes, which are bed and breakfast, or gîtes, depending on where you're going to be. If you are doing the Eurostar, you are going to probably need a car. So whatever town or city you come into, unless you're buying in a city where obviously you won't need a car at all, but most of our Brit clients and most of the British people that buy in France buy in the countryside locations or in the Alps, for example, or the Côte d'Azur, but they're normally holiday type destinations, and because of that and the rural communities that they're in, you will need a car to travel between, because you might be seeing one agent in one area and a totally different area agent in another. It's not like if you were buying in Spain or Tenerife where the agent would pick you up, you'd go to one complex and maybe see 5 or 6 different properties in the same complex.
And get tied up until you bought something.
You're not allowed out until you bought something, yeah, exactly. And why aren't you buying? And then you're taken back to the airport and sent back with your check signed. It's not quite like that anymore, I'm sure. But yeah, I would suggest, but also because we always advise that you spend some time on your own, not just with the agent. So to be able to spend some time on your own and look at the areas and go out to the local cafes, speak to the local people, you would need a car. So
well, that rental car will just give you that bit of freedom.
It gives you the freedom, and it also gives you the space, and you can travel from place to place. Most most of our clients, I'd say, would fly and pick up a car at the airport, or they drive over, particularly those with dogs and pets that might be coming on, using the property search trip as also a little bit of a holiday.
Any quarantine issues with dogs?
Not at the moment, no. We don't know what's going to happen after Brexit, but at the moment there's no quarantine with dogs, no.
So you can move your pets freely around?
Free, as long as they've had the rabies jab and they've got their pet passport, which they have to have done the worming, etc., the day before they travel, and that has to be proven in the pet passport. They can freely travel around France. And a lot of our clients do. And we've noticed in the last 6 months, with obviously what's happening in the world with COVID, etc., that a lot of people are tending to drive over. They don't want to fly. They don't want to get on trains, so they are tending to drive. And then obviously it depends how far you want to go down France, because from Calais to the Côte d'Azur, for example, is 1,200 kilometres. So it depends how long you've got. And if you're stopping off on the way, then that's fantastic. But if you've only got a few days, you don't want to be driving down to the Côte d'Azur. You'd probably be better to fly.
Okay. So, all right, we meet up. I've got my rent-a-car. You come and meet us at the hotel or guest house that we're staying in?
Well, generally we wouldn't do that. The reason is because the properties, as I say, are quite far apart.
Right.
So you might have chosen one there and the next one's an hour away.
Okay.
So rather than us go all the way over there to where your hotel or wherever it is you're staying, it would usually be guest houses in France. Generally speaking, most people prefer to stay in a holiday home, a gîte or an Airbnb, for example.
Okay.
There's not so many hotels, particularly in rural communities. They are in the cities, but not in the rural communities. So we would suggest, if the property, say, is in Villebois-la-Valette, it's the name of a town, we would suggest that we meet you in a cafe in Villebois-la-Valette, so we can sit down, have a coffee before we head off for the day, talk about the town. You get a feel for what the local town is to that particular property, and then we head off to that property. Then if you were changing agents, because the next property is with a different agent, you would travel across and perhaps meet them at an office. But we tend to say, let's meet in the local village, local cafe or local bar or whatever, so that you really get be able to appreciate what's around you and what's near to that property. So it would tend to work like that. And then at the end of the day, we'd find a cafe and we'd sit down, talk about all the properties, etc. Then you'd head back off to wherever you're staying, relax by the pool, have a glass of wine, and then get ready for the day, you know, the day ahead. And if you are changing areas, you might be staying in one and then drive off to another chambre d'hôte or Airbnb or whatever in another area.
Okay, so we look at a few properties over the next 2 or 3 days. Are you expecting me to make a decision there and then in that trip?
We don't expect anything, because obviously everybody's at different stages. When we do a property show, for example, in the UK, somebody might come to the show for the first time. They're just dipping their toe in the water about buying abroad. They're not even sure if they want France or Spain. So they might be, you know, just finding out information. We might have clients that come to the stand that have been over 4 or 5 times. They're really ready to buy, and they've decided on their area and they want to just talk to someone about that. So there's all different stages. It depends on the property as well. Some vendors in France, if you're at really early stages and you're just doing a recce trip, some of the French vendors can be a little bit funny. Well, if they're not ready to buy, we're not showing them around. You know, it's us that show them around, but you know, if they're not ready, then we're not doing it. But we can advise on that. We can always do outside viewings, but there'll be lots of vendors that are prepared to show properties if you're not in a buying position as such.
If you don't show it, you're not going to sell it, are you?
Exactly. But I think that the difference is if, you know, we do have clients that come over and say, well, we're going to be buying in maybe 2 to 3 years. Now, for that type of a client, obviously the vendor's going to say, well, it's going to be sold by then.
Yes.
So, you know, they can be a little bit funny. Not everybody is, but some can. But I would always say we will always have properties to show you. If you are looking at buying in 2 years and you just want to do a recce trip on the area, we'd happily show you what's available, particularly with properties that may be empty. You can spend 5 minutes in there or an hour in there if you really like it and want to know more about it. But obviously, if you're not ready to buy for another couple of years, we don't want to be wasting too many people's time, because they do get a little bit upset, particularly the French.
No, it's understandable. I suppose it's also understandable from your point of view as an agent too. You've only got so much time you can expend on sort of laying down for the future.
But saying that, I mean, I've done it, you know, I don't sell properties anymore, but I was selling for 8 years and I'd be more than happy. I mean, I loved being out with the clients. I loved the fact that I'd moved from London to France. I was so enthusiastic, loved talking about the lifestyle and, you know, all the little things, the mistakes I might have made, or the silly things that you do when you're sort of looking to buy. And I've always been quite happy to show people around, and most of our agents are. It really depends. At the moment, the property market's extremely strong, so it's extremely busy. So they are sort of, you know, we've got clients waiting for appointments. We will tend to take the ones that are really wanting to buy this year, as opposed to the ones that are just coming over to have a look around.
Okay. So I look at one of your properties and I'm in love with it. I think it's great. It's just what I want. What are you going to want me to do? Are you going to send me away to do some kind of due diligence? And if you are, what would you expect me to do?
No, it's France is a very different way of buying. It's not the same as the UK. It's a little bit more like Scotland, how they buy in Scotland. Totally different to Spain and Italy. It's very, very secure, particularly for the buyer. So what would happen is, if you love the property, if you wanted to have a survey done, you'd have to have that survey done before you put an offer in. Because in France, you're not subject to surveys. There's no surveys done. The French don't do surveys. Basically, there are 5 diagnostic tests that are done. And before you sign anything, you have to see those reports. Those are paid for by the seller, not by the buyer.
So would he or she have them already prepared?
No, the reason being is because they obviously have to pay for them, and they can cost anything from 500 to 1,000 euros. So they're not going to go and have those done without an offer, because they're only valid for a certain period of time. So, you know, once they receive an offer, we can have those tests turned around very quickly. We will instruct the conveyancing chap that will come around and make those tests, and we can have them ready, generally speaking, within a week. Okay. So it's not too difficult to do. If the house has fallen through or somebody hasn't got finance, the test might already be there ready to go. So in that respect, we can turn it around even quicker. Okay. And there's certain things like a termite test, which all properties have to have. That's only valid for 3 months. So if the sale even goes over 3 months, we'd have to have that test done again.
Okay. Well, what I'm trying to get from you is, what would you advise me to do? So I've looked at this property. I think I really love it. Do I ditch you then for a day and go for a wander around on my own to see what's all about me, what's happening in the villages, or
I mean,
what do I do?
It depends who you're with. If you're, you know, if you were with me, for example, we would have already discussed the village. We'd have been in the village. We'd have probably had a beer at the end of the day, or a glass of wine. We would have had a coffee. So you'd have got a lot.
And
you'd
who's
have learned a lot. Generally speaking, it would be me. But but you know, it really depends on where you are. And I wouldn't obviously at the property make an offer, because you'd want to go away and think about it. Then the next morning, you know, you'd call your agent. You say, like, I'm thinking of putting an offer. This is what I'm thinking of. What do you think? Now, the agent will know what situation the vendor is in. It could be an inheritance, and there could be 9 people involved in the sale, because they've 9 children have inherited it. In that case, it's always a little bit tricky, because you'll always get one that doesn't want to accept. Unless it's the asking price, then they have to accept. At the moment, because the market's strong...
Just run that by me again. So if you offer the asking price...
Yeah, you have to accept.
Do they?
Yeah, because the mandate in France literally says they all have to sign for us to be able to market that property on the mandate. And as part of the mandate, if the full asking price is offered, it's a done deal. And
would that apply to just a normal vendor who's selling on their own too?
Exactly, yeah. It's asking price offers have to be accepted.
I suppose it stops any form of gazumping, doesn't it?
Well, the good thing about this as well is that the vendor, once signing, so what happens is a compromis de vente is drawn up. That's like the exchange of contracts. That could be done within a week of you making an offer, because we've had all the tests done, ready to go. You then would sign that as a buyer, and then it's given to the vendor to sign. Once the vendor sign, can't sell it to anyone else. So this could be within a week of you putting an offer in. Okay. The buyer, however, has a 10-day cooling off period. So you go back to the UK, or you're in the UK and you think, you know what, I don't really want that house now. You can still pull out within those 10 days. The vendor can't. So he literally can't sell it to anyone else unless you actually write and say, we no longer want to buy the house.
Joanna, thank you so much for the information you've given us. I'm sure that's been very helpful to our viewers. Now, as I mentioned at the start of the programme, our next programme will deal with the geography of France and some of the special areas that no doubt you can tempt us to buy in. I'm Stephen Galpin. Join me again next time on Property Matters.